Hi, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Katrina Tauro, and I'm a Project and Resource Coordinator for CompNow. My role is to assist clients with organising resourcing for both large and small-scale projects. Today in our webinar, we'll be talking about Apple Modern Deployment Launchpad. Joining us from CompNow, we have Marcus Ransom, who's our Apple Solutions Architect, and Aaron Poley, our Senior Pre-Sales Engineer. We'll start off today with talking about what is Apple Modern Deployment Launchpad. Aaron, are you able to answer this for us?
Yeah, definitely. Look, the Launchpad is really a way to understand or to get a really working model of how Mac devices can be deployed in your organization. So the goal is really to not necessarily tick all the boxes in terms of everything that an organization may want or need, but to get a baseline, to get a foundation and a proof of concept of how macOS devices can be deployed in an organization, and more importantly, in yours, because that's what we're trying to achieve. Not just a generic sense of how Macs can be deployed, but taking Apple best practice and putting it in your environment to deploy it in a way that's going to benefit end users and provide a foundation for how the business can move forward, the organization can move forward with macOS.
The other thing that's important about Launchpad is that everything works in the slide deck, everything works in the presentation. Actually being able to see this working on real devices, on your real network, with real users, really solidifies all of the ideas about what's possible. And this is demonstrating that not only could it be possible, but it is actually possible.
Thanks, Marcus. And what does CompNow bring to this space?
Well, CompNow is Australia's largest and first Apple Authorised Enterprise Reseller, but our pedigree has been with Apple for decades. We've been doing this for a long time, and so we have an understanding of what's required to deliver this in different ways for all of the different organisations. We've got over 75 engineering staff around the country in most states of Australia, so that gives us the breadth and the depth to be able to deliver these kind of engagements for lots of different customers.
Yeah, it's really important to note that whilst we also have been doing it for a long time, we're also staying on top of Apple's latest and greatest practices as well. And for those of you who have been managing Macs for a while, know that landscape has changed a lot over the last 10 years. What we used to do, the way that you would used to manage and deploy devices, is not actually how you should be doing it today. So we're really in tune and really passionate about taking the best of modern deployment and management in an Apple environment and applying that to your organization.
Thanks, Aaron. So just circling back there a little bit, how do we stay on top of Apple's best practices?
Look, that's a great question. The reality is that with our partnerships, with our strong and close relationship with Apple, we're making sure that we're getting from the source of truth, if you like, the best practice that they want us to achieve. That combined with real world experience. So as Marcus said, we have over 75 engineers in the business across the country, across many states of Australia. And we have a lot of on-the-ground real-world experience deploying and managing Macs at scale. So in combination with our partnership with Apple and with our experience and the continued iteration that is the Apple ecosystem and how it's evolving month on month, week on week, it's really important that we're taking and we're gathering all that together as an organization. We're working with our customers in a partnership with Apple and with them to deliver the best experience.
Thanks for that, Aaron. That makes a bit more sense to me now. So, Marcus, can you take me through a bit more how the process works?
Okay, well, so first we need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. What are the objectives for your organization with a Mac deployment? So we work through answering questions, breaking things down into modules as to how we're going to address networking, how we're going to address security, what you need in terms of applications, how we're going to address device management. Then we have a look at those and work out what sort of prerequisites there are, what sort of requirements. Once those are addressed, we'll then rapidly spin up a device management solution, and with your teams implement those basic building blocks to be able to deliver working machines in your environment.
So, Marcus, you mentioned just before about breaking it down. What are some of the available modules?
Okay, so the key to delivering Launchpad compared to a fully fledged production environment is to have a scope of works where we break it down into those modules, so we can deliver something functional in a short amount of time. So we look at Apple Services Management, so your Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager, volume purchasing, managed Apple IDs, those sorts of ideas. Then we move into identity management, network integration, security, application compatibility, and packaging. So that allows us to sort of separate them off to sort of bite-sized chunks to address. Work out what we can make in scope for this Launchpad and what we would leave for a deep dive later for a production deployment.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, as Marcus said, it's really important. We use these modules as building blocks. So as he said, some things we may focus on, we may put in scope for this Launchpad exercise. And there's some that may be left later. And the key thing to understand is that we're spinning up an environment, we're spinning up an MDM solution to apply everything that we decide on in terms of the functional requirements, the outcomes that you want to achieve, so that this can be separate to potentially an environment you already have operating and running now, or as a foundation, as a building block to having no management environment. And this is kind of a first step to show what that could be like. The key is that we're trying to address it in an achievable way in those chunks, so that we know what's going to be important for the organization and can do it in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. And how long would you say that this process usually takes, Marcus?
Generally, we see from beginning to end, we're looking at sort of 3 months. Having said that, though, there's, the top and tail is the initial sort of discovery and decision-making process. Then we move into generally about a week of both remote and on-site configuration and setting up the environment, doing that with your internal teams so that there's that knowledge transfer, so that they understand and are part of what we've set up. But then the real key is putting those devices in the hands of some key users and letting them run with them for, several weeks, so that we can actually really understand what other solutions might need to be addressed, what other problems, what sort of opportunities there. So this is not sort of a come in, set it up and walk away. It really is seeing how those devices operate in your environment. What's the experience of the end users? What's working, what's not working. Now, we also work with your support team. So rather than your support team needing to then be responsible for those devices, CompNow can look after the support for those devices if your organization is not up to speed and offers that. So we work with you to make sure that this is successful. We're capturing all of the data from the users as to what's happening and addressing any issues that may come up that's preventing them from using those devices.
Cool. So it's not really like we're going to get involved and just leave you in the dark kind of situation. We're going to be there to support the customers afterwards.
Definitely. We want you to have a good experience in this. We want to find out any issues that need to be addressed so we can help you address them. We want the users to have a good experience. We want your support team to have a good experience. We want the executive of your organization to think that this is a valuable thing to be doing and it's going to be successful. So we're with you the whole way through the journey to make sure that you're going to get the best out of this and it's going to be successful.
Yeah, I definitely think that the term shared responsibility is a good thing to have in mind, because it's really a case that we want to help you stand up this proof of concept. We want to make sure that in that you have ownership, right? So as Marcus has said, your executives, your end users, that's really, really important, because as something becomes yours, there's a level of care and responsibility to not only maintain it, but also to see it succeed within the organization. And it's very much a partnership with us, and as Marcus said, our support teams, trying to wrap around it and give it the best chance of an incubation, if you like, of success to grow.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. From CompNow's perspective, who usually gets involved in this process?
Great question, Kat. Look, the people that get involved is definitely going to be a case of obviously IT teams and different things inside of your organization. It is going to have, as we mentioned, some end users, so some pilot users for a lack of a better description in the organization that are going to actually use this. So the key focus here is getting that technical baseline, and then get an understanding of end user feedback and engagement. So, your executives are really, really important. Executive sponsorship for this type of engagement is key. So we usually have an executive sponsor, a lead inside of your organization that owns the project, and then some key people from, be it security or identity teams, again, depending on the modules that we go forward with, the modules that we mentioned before, users and representatives from those teams, and then some key end users that will be the pilot, that will be the test case. Those are the types of people that we'll have involved in the project.
And it's important when you're identifying who these pilot users are going to be. We generally find 4 or 5 is a good fit. You don't want there to be so few users that you're not getting sort of broad and varied feedback and responses, or all of the responsibility put on a couple of individuals. But you also don't want to spread them too far around your organization, and to as a result of that, then there's the potential for there being some real operational challenges to deal with.
Yeah, Marcus, is there kind of like a criteria you look for when looking at selecting that pilot group?
Look, people who you feel are going to be able to do their day-to-day work, where we see scenarios where it's okay, here's your normal day-to-day machine, but we also want you to test this other machine as well. Generally, it doesn't get a lot of attention paid to it because people are still trying to do their actual job. So finding a user where it's okay, we're going to get some really good feedback and really good response from this user, but we're not likely to risk day-to-day work. People who are experienced using Macs, people who really want to use a Mac and are prepared to put the extra effort in to be able to use it, or people who maybe aren't that familiar with Macs, but you feel would be a good demonstration of how this could be really beneficial for people. I think the other key is to not have all of the test users being exactly the same scenario as well, but also not spread too far out in the organization that it makes it really difficult to manage. It's going to depend on the organization. It's going to depend on the size of the organization. It's going to depend on what you do. But that's something that we can definitely work with you to help identify, who the key, players would be that we'd recommend.
Yeah, I think there's definitely different trains of thoughts when it comes to selecting test users and pilot users. I think one of the ones that is out in the market is you want to have the people that are the squeaky wheel, right? The people that will actually maybe the most challenged with something to give you that feedback. That isn't necessarily what we're looking for. What we're looking for is criteria of success, right? So we don't want people that are going to silently soldier on, but we don't want necessarily people that don't like the Mac platform or just in general technically challenged. That isn't necessarily our audience. Our audience is somewhere in the middle, but very much something of the case of they want to use a Mac, they enjoy using a Mac, they use it for personal use, that type of thing, because that is going to feed really well into the idea of user choice and user experience that I think are cornerstones for Apple and Apple's success in the enterprise. So we want people that are ready and willing to use a Mac, that are in, as Marcus said, different spheres of the business to represent different workflows and different use cases, but ultimately be effective communicators so that we're setting up the exercise for success, not a bunch of people that are just going to complain the whole time and not actually be constructive in the feedback. That's really, really important.
Yeah. So just from the perspective of those watching, why is Apple Modern Deployment Launchpad important for their organizations, Marcus?
Well, like I said before, everything works in the keynote presentation. Everything works on the slide deck. Everything works in the conversation. Seeing it actually living and breathing in your organization, proving all of the benefits that we say we can, proving the methodology we have of this is how we say, and this is how Apple say, an Apple modern deployment should work, well, let's demonstrate that this can work in your environment. Many times there are lots of concerns or issues about, Macs are not capable of network security. Macs are not capable of this kind of wireless authentication. These applications won't work on the Macs. The best way to demonstrate that that's not the case is to actually show it on a device, show that somebody can do their job. If things need to be addressed in a slightly different way from how they're done normally in the organization, we can show that it still work, that the end outcome, the goal of the user being able to do their job and do their job effectively is possible. The approach of doing it slightly differently or using slightly different tools does have the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah, and I think to wrap it into a business and commercials concept, employee choice. Employee choice is a big thing that's driving, I think, the movement of the Mac in enterprise. And from us, it's not about, everyone needs to have a Mac. No. That's not the case. It's about choice. It's about give people what they want to use because they love it, right? What do they love to use? What's going to help them get their best work done? That's what we're passionate about. So enabling Macs to be first-class citizens next to their Microsoft Windows 10 brothers and sisters means that an organization will now have the diversity of different users of technology that will get real outcomes in a business sense. There's also lots of data, a lot of stats, and a lot of reports around Mac in the enterprise and things like total cost of ownership, how, when done right, Macs are actually easier to support. So there's plenty of commercial benefits, not only from a cost, but also from an employee experience, which is what a lot of organizations are actually measuring metrics against these days. And ultimately, it just levels the playing field so that whatever someone wants to come in from a talent perspective in your industry, they can come into your organization, they can use what they want to use, and they can get their work done. That's what we're trying to do.
We also see lots of organizations where they do have an existing Mac fleet, but due to the resources and the internal skill set that they may have, those devices aren't given, as Aaron mentioned, that first-class citizen status on the network, and showing that offering employee choice for device doesn't mean that you have to be on the guest network, doesn't mean that you have to do everything work-related through a virtualization platform, that we can actually move those devices onto the primary network and dealt with that way. And being able to bring your internal teams along for the ride and show them that these concerns that they have as to how they're going to be able to do that, there are solutions, and we're used to dealing with those solutions and turning them into reality for lots of organizations. And this is a really effective way to show that to organizations that, this can be done. There is a solution for this, and it's able to be done in a really robust, a really secure, really sustainable fashion.
Thanks for that, Marcus. So, Aaron, what are the next steps after a successful Launchpad?
It's a great question, Kat. So basically, when we have gone through and we've done the process to discover what it is that you need in terms of the modules and the components, to actually carry that out and implement that and get that then into the hands of end users, we go through and we do a feedback process to make sure that all of the, experiences that the end users have had, et cetera, are wrapped together. We make sure that there's that support package, et cetera. And we come to a point at the end where we review the success of the exercise. We make sure that we've gained key learnings from that, and we figure out then from that point what to do with the environment and the devices and the end users. So as we said before, this is very much a proof of concept exercise. It's not implementing a production solution. It's implementing something in an incubator to kind of prove and see what has been successful, and then have that as a platform for both us as CompNow as partners to your organization, but also for your organization internally as well, on what your next steps are to make Mac that first-class citizen, as we said. So this is very much a let's prove it. Let's see what we can do. Let's get those key outcomes and those key learnings, and in a sense, spin that down, close that off, and then have generate next steps for how to take the learnings and apply them into the organization in your production environment.
Because there may be items that come out in the discovery phase or even in the implementation phase that are, aren't included in the modules of what we're going to deliver here. They may be, identified as being out of scope because they may require, other parts of your infrastructure to be upgraded or to be addressed in a slightly different way. So they're made out of scope so that we can get the Launchpad up and running and, address all of the other questions and solutions that the company wants to look at. Once we get out of the Launchpad phase, we can then decide how we're going to address those solutions, what sort of things need to be implemented, what sort of projects need to be put in place to then be able to allow the production environment to be delivered in the more modern way that we've decided is what your organization should be doing.
Yeah, and just to tail on to that, I have seen firsthand, and I know Marcus has as well, that if we try and tackle too much, nothing gets done, right? So the key of this exercise is a focused, narrow, timeline-driven exercise to prove, to get the quick wins, to get the learnings, and then from there, understand what the larger tasks at hand may be. If we try and tackle too much, we'll get nothing done at all. And that's a key point of this exercise.
Yeah, so for those out of scope kind of activities, they're things we can work with the customer on to implement down the track. Is that correct, Aaron?
100%. And that's why me and my team, for example, in pre-sales and CompNow exist to partner with our account managers to work at what those modules, what those different exercises, scope of works can be to tackle those learnings as we go.
Cool. I think that's all we have time for today. If there is anything you have questions about after watching this webinar, feel free to give us an email at sales@compnow.com.au and we'll be in contact with you shortly. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.